Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Muchas gracias por estar acá presentes. Les damos la bienvenida a nuestra casa, disculpen. Antes de dar inicio, vamos a tener unas palabras de bienvenidas. Primero vamos a comenzar con la decana de la Facultad de Psicología y Bienestar Humano, la doctora Ana Laura Palombo. Va a continuar la directora de la carrera de Enfermería, Magíster Ivana Marmisole. Y va a seguir la directora de la Fundación Canguro, la doctora Pamela Moreira. Muchas gracias.
Buenas tardes a todos. Es un honor y una gran alegría darles la bienvenida en nombre de dos facultades, en nombre de la Facultad de Psicología y Bienestar Humano y en nombre de la Facultad de Salud, en nombre del decano de la Facultad de Salud. Tengo eco, eso ya. No. En nombre también del doctor Dalién Salinas, que es el decano de la Facultad de Salud, que hoy no ha podido acompañar, pero que especialmente me encomendó que les diera la bienvenida. En realidad, para nosotros, en nuestras dos facultades, estamos comprometidos especialmente en la formación de personas que de alguna manera tengan y cuenten y se formen en el cuidado integral de las personas a lo largo de todo el ciclo vital. Sin duda, esta charla, esta conferencia de hoy se alinea profundamente con esa idea, con ese concepto y sobre todo en esto de integrar el conocimiento científico en prácticas que promuevan el bienestar humano. Y justamente el método Canguro es un ejemplo clarísimo de inspiración, de cómo la ciencia se materializa en acciones concretas que tienen que ver con la lactancia, con el vínculo, con el cuidado. Y eso realmente termina sin duda impactando fuertemente en la calidad de vida, ¿no? Tanto del recién nacido también como de sus madres. Así que nos sentimos realmente privilegiados en nuestra casa de estudios, por supuesto, de poder recibir al doctor Nils Bergman, creador y promotor de este método, y agradecerles especialmente a todos la confianza, a la Fundación también por haber creído en nosotros. Así que sea una excelente conferencia, que disfruten muchísimo y de vuelta muchas gracias por estar hoy acá.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos. Realmente es un placer ver el aula magna de esta universidad tan querida para nosotros, llena de gente. Realmente para nosotros es, como les decía Ana Laura, un verdadero placer darles la bienvenida y recibirlos en un día tan especial. Hoy realmente nos convoca un tema que para nosotros es profundamente interesante y que aborda en cierta parte lo que es el cuidado materno-infantil. Nosotros entendemos el cuidado materno-infantil como algo centrado en el vínculo afectivo y en este marco tenemos el privilegio de recibir al doctor Nils Bergman, quien es reconocido internacionalmente como el creador y principal promotor del método Canguro. La presencia del doctor Bergman es para nosotros un acontecimiento realmente histórico a nivel país, no solo por la relevancia científica que tiene su trayectoria, que realmente cuando me compartieron desde la fundación el currículum del doctor, eran hojas y hojas y hojas con una trayectoria que realmente uno dice, wow, no puede decir otra palabra. Realmente escuchar de primera mano a quien transformó el modo de comprender y acompañar en el inicio de la vida, para nosotros es un verdadero privilegio. Queremos expresar profundamente un agradecimiento a la Fundación Canguro, a UNICEF, a IULAM. Gracias a la colaboración de todos ellos hemos podido realmente contar con la valiosa presencia del doctor aquí en el día de hoy. La sinergia que realizamos entre las instituciones permiten y reflejan el compromiso conjunto por el cuidado humanizado y orientado a la persona, especialmente en los primeros momentos de vida. Justamente, y por qué esto lo podemos enmarcar en lo que es la profesión de enfermería, realmente entendemos que la enfermería es una profesión, de cuidado, y el encuentro nos interpela de una manera muy particular. Somos quienes acompañamos a las familias y a los recién nacidos en los momentos más frágiles y trascendentes de la vida. Por eso comprender y aplicar las prácticas que utiliza el método Canguro no solo eleva la calidad del cuidado que brindamos a quienes atendemos, sino que también honramos el sentido profundo de lo que es nuestra profesión. El método Canguro, sustentado en la evidencia, nos recuerda lo que es el calor humano, el contacto piel a piel, la lactancia, la cercanía emocional, que son intervenciones tan poderosas como también lo es la tecnología más avanzada en el cuidado de las personas. Es por esto que el cuidado respetuoso y humanizado también salva vidas y mejora la salud de los niños, de las madres y de todo el entorno familiar. Como institución que somos comprometida con la excelencia académica y con el cuidado centrado en las personas, consideramos que esta instancia no solamente enriquece nuestro conocimiento, sino que también nos invita a seguir construyendo sistemas de salud más humanos y equitativos. Agradecemos entonces especialmente al doctor Bergman por la generosidad que ha tenido en venir a compartir su conocimiento y su experiencia en el día de hoy. Y también agradecemos a todos los presentes, a todos los canguros, que sabemos que hay muchos por aquí, a todos los estudiantes quienes han realmente estado muy interesados en esta conferencia, a todos los docentes, a todos los profesionales de salud que de una forma u otra participan en lo que es la asistencia de los recién nacidos. Con enorme entusiasmo, entonces, los invitamos a abrir nuestra mente y nuestro corazón para poder aprovechar entonces al máximo este intercambio, que estamos seguros dejará una huella profunda en lo que es nuestro conocimiento. Así que muchas gracias, bienvenidos a todos y bienvenido también al doctor Berno.
Bueno, realmente comparto lo que decía Ivana, qué lindo que es ver esta enorme aula llena de gente deseando escuchar a Berman. Nosotros cuando resolvimos traer a este más que ilustre doctor, enseguida pensamos en el futuro, ¿no? En qué importante que es que estas enseñanzas no queden en los que estamos hoy cuidando recién nacidos desde los distintos lugares. Lo importante que es que las nuevas generaciones también tengan este conocimiento y que tengan, como decía Ivana, también este trato humanizado donde el bienestar está en el centro, en este caso en el bienestar de los recién nacidos y de sus madres. Pero bueno, en mi calidad de presidenta de la Fundación, quiero compartirles un poquitito de lo que hacemos para que ustedes también conozcan nuestra labor, que es bien particular. Dicho por el doctor Berman, que estuvo visitándonos, no lo había visto nunca en el mundo, así que bueno, les vamos a compartir ahora un video muy breve para que ustedes se hagan una idea de qué es ser canguro y qué es lo que hacemos todos los días del año a las 24 horas. Muchas gracias, espero que disfruten el video y la conferencia. Yo empecé con la fundación bastante casual. Hacía un tiempo que estaba yendo a un hogar de INAU y cada vez que yo preguntaba de dónde venían esos bebitos, la respuesta que encontraba era siempre la misma. Era, bueno, vienen del Pereira Rosell. Un día simplemente vine al Pereira Rosell y encontré esta realidad que era que esos bebitos estaban privados la gran mayoría del tiempo del cuidado de sus familias de origen. Ahí fue que se me ocurrió esta idea, que fue una idea muy simple, que era armar un grupo de personas que podamos venir y acompañar a estos bebés que están en esta situación.
Se trata de cuidar bebés que necesitan del cariño, esperando que se resuelva qué va a pasar con ellos. Así que esa sería nuestra función. Yo dije, mira, esto es hermoso. Y me postulé. Y mi único horario que yo puedo es en la madrugada, así que quedé fija ahí hasta el día de hoy.
Un bebé recién nacido no solamente necesita alimento orgánico, es fundamental para su construcción, para su desarrollo, recibir nutrición afectiva. Y eso básicamente es aupar, mimar, observar, cubrir las demandas del bebé.
Yo estoy convencida que todo está guardado en la memoria, así que todo lo que le dieron acá quedó.
En casi la totalidad de los casos, los bebés ingresan porque su situación ha sido judicializada. Por ejemplo, es frecuente encontrar mamás con consumo o que están en situación de calle o que están en situación de abuso. Hay una debilidad por parte de la familia para poder hacerse cargo de ese recién nacido. ¿Qué es lo que requiere eso? Que entonces el juez determine quién se va a hacer cargo de ese bebé en el futuro, digamos, garantizar que ese bebé va a ser cuidado como se merece ser cuidado.
Cuando yo lo tuve a él, que fue un embarazo todo controlado, se complicó porque como ya tenía más hijos y no tenía la tenencia de ellos, no podían saber si yo iba a hacer lo mismo con él. Si iba a seguir consumiendo, si iba a seguir en mis andanzas. Y bueno, y las canguros me fueron orientando. El de que tenés que salir adelante porque él es chiquito y te necesita. Y gracias a eso yo hoy por hoy no fumo ni cigarro.
Nosotros encuadramos nuestro trabajo en lo que es el Código de la Niñez y la Adolescencia, que es una mirada que justamente está marcada en los derechos de esos recién nacidos, ¿no? Salvo que haya alguna restricción judicial, nosotros habilitamos siempre el ingreso de la familia de origen, porque para nosotros no solamente es un derecho del niño, es un derecho de la familia, pero además para el desarrollo de ese recién nacido es fundamental, el contacto con su madre.
Yo llevo el tema del consumo a tener a mi hijo. Eso me trajo un gran problema, ¿no? No me lo querían dar por el error que había cometido yo. Y yo no lo quería perder. Yo lloraba y vos tranquila, que vas a ver que todo va a salir bien.
El diario del bebé para nosotros es garantizarle a ese recién nacido su derecho a la identidad. Cuando tú naciste estaba tal persona y bueno, tu mamá se llama así, cuando te tuvo a ti tenía tantos años, tal día te vino a conocer tu hermanito, tal día vino tu abuela.
Les escribo si les gusta que le haga alguna caricia de abajo de la oreja o en el cuello. Cuando decía jo, cuando hablaba, cuando dormía, todo eso él tiene un librito que cuando sea grande se lo voy a dar para que él mismo lo lea.
Muchas mamás, muchos papás, abuelos escriben en ese diario. Creo que eso debe ser de los actos de amor más grandes que uno puede hacer, ¿no? Poderle decir a su hijo lo que sintió, lo que siente por él, lo que significa para esa mamá en su vida haber tenido ese bebé, aunque no lo vuelva a ver más.
Y es súper importante cosas que hace la fundación de cómo empezar a generar otra cosa, o sea, no esa cosa de que circula como la gente puede tener hijos y dejarlos. Bueno, vos viví esa vida y después hablame. Porque es muy fácil juzgar a gente que a veces no tuvo ni las necesidades básicas satisfechas.
Nosotros hemos desarrollado otras áreas que han sido muy importantes para otros recién nacidos, no necesariamente los que están en la sala canguro. Tenemos canguras que lo que hacen es atender a las mamás para que puedan extraerse leche y las llevamos inmediatamente a las unidades de cuidado donde está internado cada uno de los bebés. Nuestro objetivo es que los bebitos transiten toda su internación alimentándose de la leche materna. Otro de los trabajos que estamos haciendo ahora con los bebés prematuros menores de 1.500 gramos. Tenemos un equipo de canguras que lo que hacen es un acompañamiento a la familia, porque si esa mamá está bien descansada, bien alimentada, va a estar disponible para ese bebé. Otro de los equipos de la fundación lo que hace es el acompañamiento que nosotros le llamamos piel a piel. Por ejemplo, hay bebitos recién nacidos que están en situación de desvínculo, pero que además están con alguna patología o están bajo algún tratamiento. El canguro va y acompaña al bebé en el lugar de internación donde esté. Normalmente o es en CTI o es en cuidados intermedios.
Me tocó una experiencia con una bebita que estaba en cuidados intermedios. Recién había nacido, tenía horas de nacida. Esa bebita no podía estar con la mamá, no tenía la oportunidad y no iba a estar con la mamá por distintas circunstancias. Y en determinado momento, estando con ella, había 10 bebitos más y esta bebita era la única que estaba en brazos, con un canguro. Y ahí te das cuenta, o sea, lo que es el canguro y por qué está la fundación.
Yo creo que todo ser humano, lo más importante es que necesitamos sentirnos amados. Y cuando sos tan chiquito, que alguien te cuidó. No hay una manera de expresar la gratitud que uno siente por esos seres que cuidaron el hijo de uno antes que uno.
Dar un poquito de mi tiempo es un desafío personal. Contar que uno es canguro te llena de orgullo y de reconocimiento también.
No soy la madre, no soy la tía, no soy la madrina, soy canguro, digamos. Es un vínculo único que tenés con otro ser.
Somos más de 400 canguros trabajando todos los días. Ahora nosotros empezamos el año pasado en el hospital de Maldonado. Fue nuestro primer paso a estar en el interior del país. La verdad es que uno mira para atrás y como que te cuesta creer todo lo que se ha transitado y bueno, todo lo que se ha logrado.
Looks like it's my turn. Thank you very much. Yes. And I have help from the technicians and from Sol in the translation. Thank you all very much. And so, thank you for your warm welcome and and thank you also for honoring me by coming here in the night and to meet me. And I really appreciate. And there are others that are not even in this room. Thank you for honoring me in this way. Thank you. And so you have come on a night. I was talking about this yesterday to the hospital. And I was talking this morning to the Ministry of Health and many others. And so I feel I can't say the same thing too many times. So I have this afternoon thought more broadly, what would you like to hear that's more interesting on an evening? Not for entertainment, but just as a different approach from the very raw scientific. So, 7 o'clock. Let's see how we can be going from here. I must get this to work. It's working. Kangaroo mother care. This one says, de primera mano. I don't quite know what that means. I think it's a bit embarrassing. So I made a new title, and it says, Restoring the Original Paradigm for Infant Care. And so there are my credentials, but I'm also a GP. In English, that's a general practitioner, but I'm a grandparent. Here you see me doing skin to skin in the supermarket. And so I have 6 grandchildren. I have to update my pictures. This puts a new perspective on my environment. Yes, the original paradigm does matter. So, I'm going to be saying some quite provocative things this evening. And if there wasn't a context, you would think this could be entertainment or just provocation or antagonism. But I want to start by saying that what you're going to hear is the background to the World Health Organization has written new policies. So if I'm saying something and you think it's crazy, I beg your pardon, but the World Health Organization says so. And I'm giving this background. So the World Health Organization has issued a global position paper, Kangaroo Mother Care, a transformative innovation in health care. And the guidelines say skin-to-skin contact should start with a caregiver immediately after birth. How crazy is that? At least it would have been crazy some years ago. Without any initial period in an incubator. And if the World Health Organization had not said it, you would have thought I was crazy if I told you this. Right now, in Uruguay, there are many, many, many babies in incubators, but very, very few in skin-to-skin contact. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Fundación Canguro, Yulam, Claudia, for inviting me here. And hope that this day and yesterday will be the beginning of your journey also into Kangaroo Mother Care. A significant change from earlier guidance and common clinical practice. This is totally revolutionary. No separation, no matter how small and sick the baby is. There is the document I mentioned. Here is an implementation strategy. So I hope tomorrow you will go to your laptop and you will download this and you can already start. We need to do this together. And therefore, the global position, implementation strategy, fundamental or reorganization of maternal care. The World Health Organization has made 2 totally new policies. Skin-to-skin contact should start immediately at birth, even for the unstable, small, and sick baby. When you have started, it should be provided continuously. Here you see a summary document of all the recommendations, and the first one is Kangaroo Mother Care. New, strong recommendations, high quality evidence. And therefore, if you're going to do mother's own milk and kangaroo skin-to-skin contact, you have to admit the family into the NICU. Another radical rethink. We don't have space for families in our NICUs. We built the NICUs specifically to exclude the families. Yeah. But sorry, this is the new rules. The family must come into the NICU. And here are the details. Family involvement, strong recommendation. Families of preterm infants are the ones who are going to give the care to their babies. Wow. That's not at all what we're doing right now. And then mother is central to care. You heard in the introduction from your dean and from your here also, thank you for your welcome, but you hear these words also. Kangaroo Mother Care places mother central to the care of her infant, repositioning power within health systems and humanizing maternal and newborn care. Mother is the primary caregiver, not the neonatologist, not the neonatal nurse. Mother is the primary caregiver. And the primary care that a baby needs is being on mother, having milk, being breastfed, being supported, being loved, being cared for. The Fundación has been telling us this in the introduction that we've seen. So, this requires a radical rethink of how newborn care is provided, and the 2 publications are there. Radical rethink is my quote from the World Health Organization. We must fundamentally reorganize maternal infant care. A radical rethink. With this introduction, we're going to maybe remind ourselves now and then that when I'm saying radical things, it's new World Health Organization policy, specifically also for Uruguay. Let's continue. Let's start a little bit further back. This is Ignaz Semmelweis, and he had a radical idea. It was that you should wash your hands. Why? Because he noticed that if you did, mothers didn't die of sepsis. Radical idea. But nobody could explain how he could be there. This is me, and this is his office in Budapest. And this is the current obstetric and neonatal professor in Budapest. Semmelweis was obstetric and neonatal professor. There was no. And so here we are. He proposed hand washing and decreased puerperal sepsis. But he had no explanation. He couldn't explain how hand washing, because the explanations at that time was about miasma. Have you heard of miasma? I hope not. Have you heard of contagion? Yeah. The will of God. You can't change things. How can washing hands possibly work? And therefore, Semmelweis didn't know. His colleagues ostracized him. They rejected him and his theory because he couldn't explain. As he died, Pasteur was discovering the bacteria, the germ. And Koch was providing postulates for how we understand the transmission of disease, the germ theory. Now only washing of hands makes sense. It didn't before. So this experience of Semmelweis is called the Semmelweis reflex, a metaphor for the reflex-like tendency of us to reject new evidence or knowledge because it contradicts established norms, beliefs, or paradigms. I'm going to tell you a lot of little stories. Was that a good story? Next little story. What is a paradigm? We're going to look at it. But what is the current paradigm way of looking at reality for infant care? The child is helpless. Yes? And the mother is clueless. And the father is useless. Yes? No need for a father. The mother doesn't. If this resonates, we have created this paradigm. And how did we get there? What makes a paradigm? A paradigm is things that we do because we always did them. Tradition. And then we have various cultures, different cultures. And therefore, we grow up that this is the way of doing it. And we don't ask why, because it's why. There's no more reason than, and therefore experience can also influence our paradigm, what we do. Are we good so far? So more technically, a paradigm is a constellation of beliefs, values and techniques that a community shares. Another definition, the same thing, assumptions. Things that we grow up just knowing, assuming, without questioning ever. Concepts, values, practices, that way of viewing reality, especially in an intellectual discipline. So, here is a picture of Bacchus, the wine god of ancient Rome. Can you see the man with the beard? Actually, if you look more carefully at this picture, I've taken away the beard, and now can you see that there on the right-hand side is a beautiful girl and kissing a handsome young man. If I help you a little bit, if I color it in, can you see the beautiful girl and the wonderful young man? Now, I put it back in its place. Can you see this picture? Can you see the picture differently from what you did before? This is not a paradigm shift, as I'm asking. This is an optical illusion. It's a mind visual game. But when we talk about zero separation, when we talk about restoring the original paradigm, yes, we are looking for a paradigm shift. So that is my aim with you this evening. Are we okay? It requires a radical rethink, a new way of looking. Another story. This gentleman, his name is Tarnier. He was an obstetrician in Paris, and his neighbor invented an egg hatchery. Warmth, humidity, and the chicken eggs would hatch. And Tarnier thought, that might be good for my weaklings, my small and sick babies. So he thought, let me see what I can do. But he was wise. He spoke to his friend Pierre Boudin. And Pierre said, let's look more into this. And they got together, but now they weren't dealing with eggs. They were dealing with babies. So they modified the hatchery. Now there's warmth, humidity, but also protection from Semmelweis's germs. But they put windows on the hatchery. So that mother was outside giving the care, feeding the baby, looking after the baby, giving the milk. And so this was the original couveuse d'enfant, the original, what we now call incubator. Every story has a, no, not every story, but this story has a villain, a bad man. And he took this to a commercial exhibition. And he could make a lot of money because people would pay to see such very small babies that were alive, because nobody ever saw such small babies that were alive. And so it was a big success. And he could tour all over Europe. And he could, do you know French? No. Une visite aux couveuse d'enfants est utile, interessante, instructive for every single family. And so, if you want to make more money, you have to go to the United States of America. That was true 100 years ago. I don't know if it's still true, but 100 years ago it was true. So now he toured the United States and made a permanent pavilion where people knew to come to see this marvelous thing. And there it was called Dreamland. And so, very good. But it wasn't always very good, because the second show that he ever went, all his babies died. They got infections. Where do infections? Germs. Where do germs come from? Semmelweis, mothers. Cooney blamed the mothers. And so he got rid of the mothers and he contracted wet nurses. And those wet nurses he looked after very, very well. He fed them well and he kept them clean. But they were in the background. Then he recruited pretty girls in white dresses because that improved revenues. And therefore, this now, the mother got a free pass to the show. And here we have the origin of this paradigm, this basic assumption, the policy of strict separation. Mothers may not touch their small and sick babies. And we continued in this way. There are all the parents outside. There are the babies. Hoo-ha! Yeah. And now we invent new technologies, and we make a constellation of beliefs where this is how obstetrics and neonatology practices the policy of strict separation. This is a 20th century paradigm. It's an assumption. It's a practice that constitutes a way of viewing reality for the community that shares it. The fact that we separate mothers from babies is an accident of history. And so, remember my health policy, the radical rethink. A radical rethink of how newborn care is provided. Now, I have presented, and I'm showing you now, a scientific explanation that I call nurture science. As a Semmelweis didn't have a scientific explanation. Zero separation does have a scientific explanation. The World Health Organization policies do have a scientific explanation, and I call that explanation nurture science. Are we doing okay? Stories have I told so far? You don't have to count. You don't have to count. So now, what is nurture science? I'm going to do this science briefly and not in too much detail. This is Panksepp, and he talks about a central dogma of psychobiology. everything about life begins with DNA. This DNA transcribes to RNA and then makes proteins. And the most important protein it'll ever make is a neuron that becomes a brain. Now, this brain interacts with more DNA and the environment. Now, the environment is the key part of this. The DNA, which is the genome, has switches which read the environment and therefore tell the DNA exactly how to fine-tune the protein that's going to be made, so that the protein that's made is adapted to the environment. That environment now feeds the neuron and the brain with sensations. Those sensations come from the environment and tell the brain how to behave in the environment. This brain tells the body how to act in the environment. And so it is the place which is the single common denominator, the overriding critical requirement for this science to work. Nurture science. This is the central dogma of psychobiology. That Semmelweis didn't have an explanation. And so, what is nurture? This word, I think, is lost to our culture because we don't think it's important. We think it's something nice, a bit like a teddy bear to have inside your incubator. No. So here are three dictionary definitions. Nurture, growing into a secure being. Nurture as in food, nourishment. And then nature versus nurture. And as I use these three definitions, I want to show you that that's a good description of the central dogma of psychobiology. Nurture defines everything about psychobiology. Everything is nature, that's the DNA, or nurture, that's the epigenetics, but environment is niche. So all three are required. That is the beginning of nurture. This nurture results in a brain that is acting in the environment. The brain's food is sensations. The body's food is milk. And therefore, that produces a behavior which is not interested in survival. That's not interesting. This is about thriving, about flourishing, about growing up into a secure being. So do you see that this definition fits? Now, when I spoke like this the first time, people said, this is an oxymoron. This is a contradiction in terms, because nurture and science don't belong in the same word. But now, they need to do that. So, nurture and science sound contradictory. You see, Dr. Bergman, we don't have time for this nice thing that you talk about, nurture. No, the intensive care unit is a place for life and death treatments. We must separate the babies. Our technology is such, and our technology saves lives. There, you can see, saving this baby's life. And we've always separated babies. Mm-hmm. And therefore, our outcomes are getting better all the time. The intensive care unit is not a place for nurture. Would be the greeting that I received when I first started speaking like this. We're going to deal with each of these statements, but we'll start with this one. The intensive care unit is not a place or time for nurture. Nurture science says that the environment is the overriding critical factor for the DNA, the brain, and the behavior. And anthropologists tell us for species such as primates, the mother is the environment. The mother is where the epigene reads and creates a DNA that's going to express a protein. The mother is providing the sensations that fire and wire the brain. The mother is the place for which the behaviors for thriving takes place. It's not the intensive care unit, it's the mother. Nothing an infant can or cannot do makes sense, except in the light of mother's body. Nothing an infant can or cannot do makes sense, except in the light of mother's body. That mother's body is skin-to-skin contact. It is the environment. It is the right place. The right place matters. Didn't think that before, but now nurture science, the central dogma of psychobiology, the right place is everything. And therefore, we have this public health message, zero separation, which is a translation of the scientific message of nurture science. Nurture science, zero separation. Now, what happens when I start skin-to-skin contact immediately? Trying to look at my time and how we can cover a lot of ground. I'm not going to spend too much detail in describing what happens at birth, but let's look at a few of the pictures. This is a heat camera photograph, and this chest is that of a woman, and it's 32 degrees. You can see the yellow color there, 33 degrees. This, on the right-hand side, is the chest of a mother, and that mother chest is 37 degrees. That is the right place. That is where the baby warms itself, where the baby feeds itself, where the baby protects itself. Notice my grammar, my vocabulary. It's not the mother that's doing anything. The mother is being the place. In this place, the baby does warming, the baby does feeding, the baby does protecting. These are the behaviors wired into the baby's brain, the program. And so what happens in the first 1,000 seconds is also that the microbiome gets to be there from mother rather than from somewhere else. What also happens in the first 1,000 seconds, and there are many things that are happening, so you saw me skipping some slides. Here now, what happens when the baby is in the right place is that the mother starts to signal to the baby, and the mother regulates. The warmth from the mother keeps the baby warm. The temperature helps the heart rate to be right. And the movements help the breathing to be right. So the mother sets clocks. They are oscillators. Clocks. Every single cell has a clock. And the mother sets the different clocks. In this study, Ruth Feldman had babies that got skin-to-skin contact very early, and she compared them to a group that did not. When they went home, she measured their vagal tone. What's vagal tone? Vagal tone is the autonomic nervous system controlling the heart rate, and it's got a clock that goes in milliseconds and that can fine-tune how fast and slow I beat my heart. This is a measure of stress resistance. And she could show at term age that the skin-to-skin contact had much, much stronger stress resistance. Then she brought those babies back when they were children, 10 years old. And she did exactly the same test. Now, you would have thought that those babies would be the same 10 years later. The exact opposite. the differences in the two groups was greater at 10 years than it had been at term age. And these are the clocks. There is the millisecond stress clock. Here is the 10, 15-minute cortisol clock. Here is the 1-hour sleep clock. Mother sets the clocks, which is a way of saying that she permanently sets the regulation. If you have a fridge, you have a thermostat in the fridge, and you put that, and that's the right position. The mother does that to every single system in the baby's body in a critical period. This takes place in the first 1,000 seconds of the baby's life. That's the first hour. Does it matter what you do for the first day? Very, very much, says nurture science. Nah, is what I was taught when I was at medical school. Now, this is nice. Here we are in a church. That's very wonderful. And here I have Calvin. You know Calvin? He was a theologian, but he's also this character in the cartoon. And he's asking a theological question. Do you believe in evolution? And Hobbes does not believe in evolution. You don't think humans evolved from monkeys? And Hobbes says, I sure don't see any difference. Now, it's a cartoon, so let me not defend the statement of either of those gentlemen. But let's now look at evolution, if you like, and animals. And what is the difference between Calvin and somebody else? So our cortex makes us very different from animals. Very different. But our deeper brain is highly conserved. It's very, very much the same in primates, in animals. So we can study animals and understand ourselves a little better in this way. Now, in the past, people thought, yes, you can study animals, but it doesn't apply to humans. No, it really does. If we ignore what we learn from animals, we can very profoundly do harm to human babies. So this translational research, I have spent a lot of my years reading. It has 3 programs. It has a defense program if it's in danger. And then it grows. But then it's also got to reproduce to become a species. So there we are. What is the purpose of this? Let me illustrate. Here's myself, and this is Rebecca. She's now a doctor. Simon is now an engineer. Emma is a physiotherapist. But here we're doing early biology studies because Tombi, our dog, is expecting puppies. And Simon is listening. Here you can see for the fetal heart. We're trying to guess how many puppies they're going to be. You don't see my wife in the picture, but in the next picture, here she is. The first puppy is being born. The children, or my children are there, and the 3 children from the father dog are there, all watching carefully. And so here the first puppy comes out, and my wife is just catching it so it doesn't fall too far. And the dog doesn't know anything. And so my wife very carefully breaks the sack open and rubs it a little bit, but very little, because immediately the puppy starts to wriggle. And the puppy can smell where the mother is and launches itself towards mother. And mother just watches. Mother doesn't know anything. See, the sack is still open here, and immediately the puppy is crawling. And immediately the puppy will find the nipple. The ears are closed, the eyes are closed, but the baby can smell. Smell drives it in this way. And the baby starts to suckle. And in the process, the mother, baby, the dog, falls asleep. Now, a few minutes later, the next puppy is going to be born. And so pigs, camels, you have a lot of cows in Uruguay, very set sequence of behavior at birth. Not all the same, all different, but a set sequence of behavior that leads to suckling and breastfeeding. A cow that doesn't swallow the colostrum, no, a calf that doesn't swallow the colostrum dies. It has to do this for its being alive. Now, that first puppy triggers caregiving behaviors in the mother. The puppy is called the pathfinder, and it triggers behavior in the mother so that now the puppy causes the mother to be caregiving. Notice, the mother wasn't born that way. She had to be triggered into this behavior. And so now you see the puppy, and now the dog is licking the baby. All mammals lick their babies. Why don't humans? I don't know. And so there, the baby is the determining factor. The baby stimulates the mother. Now, mother-baby interactions in many different ways leads to this behavior. And then the puppies start growing, and the mother lies down in the box. You can see they still got their eyes closed. They haven't opened eyes, but they can feel the mother. They can smell the mother. And now they all push their back legs, and they fight, and they scramble, and they massage. And then suddenly they swallow. And then quickly they want to go and see if there's any milk left in the neighbor's teat. Yeah? And then they go to sleep. And when they go to sleep, they do so in a very specific way. They cuddle, they nest, they go together with their litter mates, and they sleep. See, the place is determining the behavior. It is the environment that is the key factor for the epigenetics, for the brain development, and for the behavior. The place of a puppy is a nest. The mother will come in and out of that nest. The other puppies are in that nest. The place determines the behavior. That behavior is about ensuring biological needs. And so, warming, feeding, and protection behaviors intricately, inseparably linked to the right place. This man, Jeffrey Alberts, is an amazing researcher. The place changes. In the beginning, it was mother. Then it was the nest. Now, when the babies are a bit bigger, it's my garden. And the babies are such a wonderful time when they're playing on the lawn. And everybody's very happy until they get to 8 weeks. What happens then? The puppies go to a new place. And all my children cry. Yeah? There is the new owner coming to take his puppy somewhere else. Yeah? Do we like this? This is the pattern. Newborn is responsible for initiating breastfeeding, not the mother. The human? It's identical. It takes the puppy half a minute. It takes a baby half an hour. But you can recognize the exact same steps. You're familiar with the work of Wiedstrom and the 9 steps and how the baby does a very set sequence of behaviors and that leads to the suckling. There is the same crawling movement. There is the same suckling movement. There is the exact same latching on the breast. There is the falling asleep. The pattern is mammalian and universal. And it requires being in the right place. That place triggers those behaviors. So this was a quote actually about rats. And I showed it to you on puppies. but it applies to human babies, intricately, inseparably linked to the right place. Birth, skin-to-skin contact is that place. Place-dependent competence in the first hour. Is this baby feeding? No, it's not feeding. What's it doing? It's wiring the mother's brain, not feeding. There might be some colostrum in there, but that's not the issue. The baby is wiring the mother. The whole reproductive fitness program is vested in the offspring. And this is the critical period for the baby to make the mother caregiving. Now, the mother gives care to the baby. Mutual, mother-baby, psycho, physiological caregiving. And this is a critical period. The critical period is not in your curriculum, I don't think. We call it a sensitive period because it doesn't really matter if you do it in the first hour or not, says the old paradigm. The new paradigm of nurture science says it really does matter a lot. It matters everything. Birth skin-to-skin contact is a critical period behavior, and you have to start at the beginning. Now I'm back to my definition. This is in the DNA. It's coded, DNA code. It's wired in the baby's brain, and the body will do this. Are we good so far? Let's now show you this baby is 29 weeks of gestation. It was born in one of my research colleagues' hospitals in Vietnam. And she has kept this baby 0 separation at 29 weeks of gestation. And at 50 minutes of age, you see a baby that is pink. You see a baby that's not flaring. You see a stable, regulated baby. And then you see this baby start to suckle. You see this baby doing the very behavior that I had described in the puppy and in the baby. And this baby is 29 weeks. You're not allowed to know this. Your policies state the baby cannot tolerate being in skin-to-skin contact. It's not allowed to do this. Therefore, you could never imagine that this could happen. But this is our biology. And therefore, that baby is doing this behavior in a mature way. This is, remember, coded, wired. It doesn't mature as a behavior as the baby gets older. The baby is hardwired, coded to do this at 26 weeks. At 26 weeks, it might be a bit weak. It does the behavior perfectly, but it may still need help to have the milk and to have the swallowing. So, swallowing. What about the swallowing? Suckling. So now, when the baby suckles, you know this in your teaching, the nipple stimulates the back of the palate, and you get vagal stimulation. So now the baby is stable because it's in skin-to-skin contact. Because it's in skin-to-skin contact, it is suckling. Because it's suckling, it's even more stable. We're doing a profound parasympathetic stimulation. Now, the policy of strict separation means that you can hardly believe what I'm showing you. Now, swallowing. Swallowing is very dangerous for babies. Now, here you're going to see a little bit of a video. And just in the beginning, there is operating, it's a cesarean section, and this is a 26 plus 0 gestation baby weighing 8 grams. And in the beginning of the video, you'll see the mother is moving there. Now, 2 hours later, we have expressed 2 milliliters of colostrum. We have put a little earbud into the baby's mouth so that the baby has something to suckle on. And then slowly we put drop by drop by drop, and we see the baby swallowing this. Notice the baby is skin to skin. Notice the baby is prone. It's not lying on its back. All animals have a righting reflex that puts them prone. Being on your back is dangerous for a baby. And it takes 1 minute, and this baby has swallowed the entire 2 milliliters of colostrum. And you never allowed this because it's too dangerous. But you didn't even imagine that it could take place. Suckling and swallowing are hardwired in the baby's brain. It's a mammal. It's never going to learn this. It must be born doing this. Google says only at 32 weeks, maybe 36 weeks, can a baby swallow. Yes, but if you put the baby on its back and you give it a bottle, yeah, 36 weeks. But if you put the baby on its skin-to-skin contact prone and you give it small amounts, it will safely swallow. Are we okay so far? So this is what a baby does. I showed you the puppy. It finds mother, it smells mother, it connects with mother, it breastfeeds, it suckles, and it goes to sleep. Still, we're in church here. Another theological question. Are you okay? Now, do you think babies are born sinful? That they come into the world as sinners? And Hobbes says, no, I think they're just quick studies. I think they learn very quickly. How is it now that the mind, the brain, learns so quickly? I've already alluded to the answer. It's mother-infant interactions. The mother's body feeds the brain and the body of the baby with sensory informations, and they set the clocks. And they do so through oxytocin. And that requires that the baby feels safe. If you feel unsafe, you switch oxytocin off. You switch off the feeding behavior and you turn on a defense behavior. Let's briefly look at this. And the top section says, why is maternal separation stressful? And the answer is, mother is doing the buffering. Buffering, mother is doing the regulation. Mother is providing the mother-infant interactions. Why is it stressful? Because of the absence of the buffering protection of adult support. That is the definition of toxic stress. Toxic stress. What makes stress toxic? Actually, stress is necessary for survival. Very necessary. Now, if my regulator, my buffer is gone, I will cry. Now, I already wired my mother's brain to pick me up if I cry. Because that's my job. I wire mother's brain. Now, if she doesn't pick me up, maybe she's in danger. Maybe if I cry, I'll make her in greater danger. So I stop crying. But now, my regulation is gone. I've got plan B. I've got plan B. I can self-regulate. You will see in the literature and in the parenting blogs, help your baby self-regulate. Self-regulation works, but no, it's plan B. Why? So plan B is that I start producing adrenocortical reactivity. I start producing cortisol. If you go to the ER, you might be given cortisol because that helps your heart rate and your breathing for a short while. And so self-regulation for a short while is good. But when it stays high, something else happens altogether. When toxic stress is prolonged, it tells the baby's brain the world is bad. You need to keep this cortisol state. And so now, cortisol is not something that comes up for the crisis and gets washed out of the system. It becomes the system. Strong and prolonged activation of the body stress management system without buffering of adult support changes brain architecture. We're going to look exactly at how that architecture changes. There are the interactions and oxytocin. We looked at this picture already. And now there's the cortisol. Now, if the cortisol needs to stay up, the DNA has an epigenetic switch, which is an on switch for the cortisol receptor. There it is, the red switch here. This AC there is acetylation. And when the cortisol receptor, DNA receptor is on, receptors are produced and they take cortisol out of the system. And now you can calm down nicely. That's what we want. But that cortisol receptor can be switched off. That means that there are fewer receptors for cortisol. That means that cortisol stays in the system. This is a very good thing if you live in a dangerous world. So you adapt to being in a dangerous place. And you change your epigenetic settings so that cortisol stays high in the system. Meany, in this experiment, had rats. And these mother rats had on switches. Those on switches for cortisol came out of the system, therefore oxytocin was higher. And these mothers cared, high grooming. They licked and cared for their babies, and their babies grew up to behave like their mothers and healthy. But other rats in his laboratory had these off switches. They had high cortisol. They did not care for their babies very much. And their babies became like them, and they were unhealthy. Now, his experiment. He took this baby from the high grooming mother and gave it to a low grooming mother from birth. And in 7 days, these on switches in the baby got switched off in the baby. Early care alters the switches for cortisol. He could do the opposite. He could take a baby with high cortisol and off switches. And early mother care can change the epigenetic switch to become on and activated. Earliest care at birth matters. The more receptors are expressed, the sooner I lower my cortisol, the sooner I go back to the oxytocin connection lifestyle. But the receptors that stay high are necessary and good, carefully, necessary and good if the environment is dangerous. It's an adaptation to a bad environment. This adaptation applies to cortisol. It also applies to several other hormones. And critical period, yes, it's very early, once off, and forever. After that 1 week, you cannot change those switches. There's a predictive, adaptive response. And so, mother's smell tells the baby it's safe. It is mother's smell which is the key messaging for the baby to sleep and for sleep cycling to take place. Sleep is necessary. Cortisol. Another hormone is called orexin. Orexin. It's a sleep hormone. And here it is. Now, if you take rats and you separate them for 3 hours a day, there we are, where's my next slide? 3 hours a day in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon, just for 10 days. And you will permanently switch the orexin into a mode. That means that this baby has sleep disruption and a disrupted circadian rhythm, attention deficit disorder. Do you remember attention deficit disorder? That was induced. That is an adaptation of disruption. And so, this is what we do in our intensive care unit. I'm giving a very broader little picture here now and spending a bit of extra time on this. Are you still okay? Following me now? So here, there's something called life history theory. Developmental adaptation and evolutionary perspective. And never mind the text, I want to explain it for you. Here you have the environment. And if it's good, it's oxytocin that drives. So the environment is never ideal because it's variable. I use the word ideal because when I have a small and sick baby, I really, really want to know how good it can possibly become. So that's why I've added ideal myself. But benign or malevolent are the choices that the DNA has to make about the environment. Are we okay? So if the environment is good, benign, then my development becomes more suitable. And so this comes with stress resistance because my cortisol will go up, but I'll take it out of the system, and now cortisol isn't bothering anymore. That is what resilience is. Now, the more unsuitable, the less perfect the environment is, the more necessary it is to keep my cortisol higher, but that comes at a trade-off. I exchange resilience for vulnerability. This cortisol stays high in my system. I end up with high blood pressure. The changes that are taking place in my sleep affects my brain development. This is called the environment of evolutionary adaptedness. So now, let me come back to the mother rat. Here is the high licking and grooming mother rat, and there's the low licking and grooming mother rat. Is the low licking and grooming mother rat a bad mother? Okay. Not. She can be the better mother because she's able to provide food and survival for that offspring in a world where there is chaos and anarchy, where there is rape and pillaging. And this mother will still keep that baby alive. But the baby knows that mother is perfect. But the mother's behavior is telling the baby that the world is imperfect. Do we see this difference? It's not the mother that's the problem. It's the environment. And the mother is signaling to the baby what the world looks like through her behavior. Am I making a point? It's the environment that really matters, and the trade-off comes with this. And therefore, these early changes are very early, once off, and forever. Toxic stress alters gene expression, not only for cortisol, orexin, but also for vasopressin. Also, I think I have some more slides to show you that. And so, I think, yeah. So these changes in this particular picture, sorry, I'm going to, here we are. So here's a primate in the hippocampus and the cortisol receptor. And this primate here now is separated for 1 hour a day, 1 hour a day. 23 hours of the day, the baby is with mother. Only 1 out of 24 hours, the baby is separated. And here you can see brain changes in the hippocampus. Hippocampus is where all the cortisol receptor lives. And this brain pattern of 10% reduction of volume is the identical one you will find in an adult with depression. Here we can go to a school ground and we can measure the hippocampal volume. We can measure babies who have depression, and we can compare that with babies who have high or low maternal support. And what you find, high maternal support, low depression score. Low maternal support, the hippocampus volume is smaller. So are we together? The more severity, the low maternal support, the lowest hippocampal volume. We have affected the cortisol receptors. Here's something called the second knock. I think there's so many details here. I'm just going to have to go on. And then, very briefly, to take this further and say we have something called allostatic load. Have you heard of allostatic load? What now happens to our baby that has to adapt is that it's running in higher revs. And so it doesn't matter what kind of stress it is, the identical single cortisol response follows. Now, because you're adapting, instead of driving down the freeway in the 6th gear smoothly, and you're still going at the same speed in 3rd gear. Works fine, but it doesn't last. It wears out. Perfectly functional, perfectly good, but there's an allostatic load. You've changed the settings for cholesterol, for blood pressure. Blood pressure is vasopressin. It's exactly the same one that causes stress. And therefore, you change the settings for a number of different systems, and you have a high allostatic load, which eventually results in a breakdown. Why suddenly did I get diabetes at the age of 30 or hypertension at the age of 40? Because you started it when you were born. Because your settings were made this way. And so, this is a monkey. And half these monkeys have been raised with mother. The other half, you can't separate a monkey, it's not allowed, it's unethical. But you can put lots of little baby monkeys together, and then they comfort each other. So now you can compare such monkeys with peer-reared and mother-reared. And when you're in mother, at the age of 2, you now have a stress, and the cortisol goes up. Good. And 20 minutes later, the cortisol comes down. When you've been peer-reared, the cortisol goes up and stays up. How simple is that? You don't have the receptors to take it out of the system. This is allostatic load. This is how the mechanisms for many different settings of what happened to you when you were a child impact your lifespan. We didn't know that. It does matter how you're born. It does matter how we care for you when you're born. Here's more information on allostatic load. And eventually, You see, this is stable, this is fine, no problem. This is the same stable, same fine, no problem, but there's a difference. That's going to break. So allostatic load is now a way also then of understanding that this epigenetic settings can also influence, very briefly, your immune system and your metabolic system, and very specifically, your system that's providing oxytocin, dopamine, and cortisol. Because this is the system that controls threat appraisal. Am I safe? This is the system where when you're born, you want a place attachment mechanism so that you can integrate emotional systems for social affect. That is resilience, stress resistance. That was a long story. Are we okay? Am I okay? I think I'm going to do a little piece, and then we're going to have a little exercise. So, continuing. Resilience, the capacity to maintain healthy emotional functioning in the aftermath of a stressful experience. So now, I spoke about the baby cries, and the mother is coded, wired by the baby to respond. So here now is a baby, and you're familiar with this treatment. Works so well. Baby, calm down. Do you recommend this in Uruguay? It's recommended all over the United States. But I hope not in Uruguay. Because actually, what you're seeing here now is a rising crescendo sound fires the amygdala, the emotional brain. And you see the baby doing a Moro reflex, a startle reflex. And then you see the baby looking around and is looking for your face, but it can't find your face. So then it stops looking around and it just stares into space. And then you see the baby going into fisting and extension. That stage is called vigilance. I'm looking for you. That stage is called freeze. And then eventually the baby looks like it's relaxing. That stage is called dissociation. These are high cortisol states. So when you're in a calm state, oxytocin is working. But now when you have high cortisol, you're in a state of arousal and vigilance. And crying means that when my mother is close to me and the threat is far, we call it distal, then crying is a good defense mechanism. My mother will pick me up. But if the threat is closer to me than my mother is, crying is a bad idea. And then I go into freeze. Hyper parasympathetic, hyper sympathetic state. Maybe can't keep it up for very long. And then it changes from a state of fear to a state of terror. And so that baby that you thought was calmed down is actually dissociated in a state of terror. And it took 30 seconds to produce that. That baby is self-regulating. And it comes at a very high cost. And so, am I safe is the key factor. Threat appraisal system. When your earliest experiences are stress regulation, that is going to become stronger and stronger and stronger. When your earliest experience is emotion regulation by mother, buffering, you're going to become resilient. I'm saying the same thing in many different ways. Does this make sense? It's mother buffering that is the determining factor, and it begins at birth. Self-regulation does work, but it does so in a bad way. So this is the key scientific deliverable: the capacity to maintain healthy emotional functioning in the aftermath of a stressful experience. Nurture science, zero separation, basically the same thing. Separation causes harm. There's some publications. We got one more of these cartoons. Do you believe in the devil? You know, a supreme evil being dedicated to the temptation, corruption, and destruction of man. Hobbes says, I'm not sure man needs the help. I'm not sure man needs the help. And so the help is that we have to bring back nurture. Because if we don't, we have destruction. I think we're going to have a brief pause here. I think I'm halfway. Are you halfway listening or more than halfway listening? So we're going to do a little exercise. We did the same this morning. When I give the word, I ask all of you to stand up where you are. Don't go anywhere. But now I want you to give some skin-to-skin contact to a neighbor while I count for 10 seconds. I'll only start counting. Please stand up. When all of you are doing some skin-to-skin, you can't stand by yourself. You have to do skin-to-skin with somebody. Yes. So now, I can't count until... Are you doing skin-to-skin? Yes, I can see. Okay. Well, let's go. Ready? 1, 5, 9, 10. Very good. You may sit down. Now, I don't have a roving microphone, so I can't easily hear your answers. But now each of you wants to answer clearly for me a question. What did you feel when you were doing skin-to-skin contact? What did you feel? And I'm not listening because I can't hear very well. But my second question. What part of your brain is answering my question? What part of your brain is answering my question? You did skin-to-skin contact, you felt something. Your answer comes from your amygdala. Your amygdala, which is your emotional brain. You feel warmth, closeness, friendliness, peacefulness, connection. What were the things you felt? You felt emotion. If I was doing skin-to-skin here, you would feel that my hand is sweaty. No, you wouldn't feel that. You would feel a bit embarrassed. If you're an Englishman, you only tolerate a little bit of skin-to-skin contact at a long distance for a short time. Because an emotion is not necessarily a good one. It might be uncomfortable for some of us, sir. But now, when you do skin-to-skin contact, the pathway is directly from your spinothalamic tract to your amygdala. And it evokes an emotion before you're cortically aware of it. Did I illustrate some nurture science? And therefore, that emotion, skin-to-skin contact, is part of our humanity. We're defined by our relationships and our emotions. I think I've left my little toy here. Good. So now, that was a point to kind of make a small point of departure. Where is the evidence? I'm now going to want to share with you some research, which I have been part of. And it's a little bit disjointed, but it comes with some messagings where I've come from. Am I safe? Neuroception, threat appraisal. Am I safe? Mother dependence is how I define a newborn. Maternal separation is stressful. So I've drawn this picture specifically as a research hypothesis. What happens if I peak baby with mother or I separate? I've already told you that I showed you these programs in the brain that are activated. Now, am I able to measure scientifically, physiologically, with instruments, am I safe? Yes, such things can be measured. And so you get a particular behavior, which is breastfeeding, or protest despair. You saw the baby in fear, terror. But those show themselves in heart rates, breathing rates, temperatures. And so one can measure those. One can also measure these directly in cortisol and in oxytocin. Expensive, difficult. But one can also measure these in the EEG. And I have done this. So here we are. Remember, the place, the correct place. Am I in the right place? So this is the right place. Mother or other. And now, having put it like this, I'm able to design a research study very specifically. And I can for randomize babies from skin to mother or to incubator care. I got a little bit of money, and the hypothesis is that babies are going to be more stable, better off. And now I do a study where I'm not going to go into the research details of this. It's published, so you can see it. It's called a trial profile. It shows the babies. Now, what is a stable baby? When I studied the literature, there's no definition for stable baby. Everybody says the baby's got to be stable, but nobody defines it. What we can define is an unstable baby. So, obviously, if you have a baby with a low temperature, it's unstable. If you have a heart rate that's not good, or a breathing that's not good, or the SATs, or the... So we can make a list. If any one of those is ticked, your baby is unstable. Are we okay so far? So, I put 30 babies, half of them skin to skin, half of them in incubator. And the incubator babies, 92% of them are unstable. We knew that before. Babies are in incubators because they're unstable. That's what we put the babies in the incubator because of. But with mother, only 17%. If I invert this, 8% are stable, 80% are stable in skin-to-skin contact. Next, I want to show not a measure of unstable, so I have to invent a measure of stability. Now, stability is not a point in time, so I choose a 5-minute window, during which I measure the heart rate with that machine, respiratory rate, and oxygen saturation, and I create some intervals. Now, during those 5 minutes, I can assign a score, 2 or 1 or 0 for each of those. Now, the baby can be 6 out of 6 and it's stable. Are we okay so far? I've invented an instrument for measuring stable. Now, from the very, very first hour, skin-to-skin babies, more than half were stable until 6 hours. Only 11% of the other. At 6 hours, in the 6th hour, every single baby was stable in skin-to-skin contact. 6 hours. That takes 6 days in an incubator. And the smaller the babies are, the more unstable they are in the incubator. So actually, this is what my results show. From the first hour to the 3rd to the 6th hour, the skin-to-skin babies became stable. The incubator babies became more and more unstable in the time. So this is the conclusion of my research. Incubators destabilize newborns. I did say I was going to be provocative. That's what my results show. Incubators destabilize babies. And you thought the opposite. But you see, I explained the nurture science, and I've explained the mechanism for testing it. So this is published in Acta Pediatrica. That mother is stabilization, separation causes dysregulation. So let's say the same thing in another way. Premature babies are not in incubators because they're unstable. Premature babies are unstable because they are in incubators. I think most of your babies in Uruguay are in incubators, and you are making them unstable. Another study, more recently. This is Tina Klemming, my research colleague. The immediate parent-infant skin-to-skin study. Parent, because in Sweden, mothers and fathers both do this. So now, I'm going to show you what zero separation can look like. This is a mother in Norway, and we've gone to Norway to implement and test the method for our research. And so she's had 2 days of corticosteroids, and eventually now she's going to give birth, and she signed consent because she knows she's part of a study for the World Health Organization. And as the little film snippet starts, the baby is actually being born, and we've just put some fuzz where the baby comes out, as you can see. And now there's some sound here. No separation. Hear the baby's sound. Don't hear anything else. That's 1 minute. Zero separation. I'm going to show it to you again, but I'm going to comment, and I'll switch off the sound. And so the baby's born, the cord is not cut, The baby is placed on the mother's abdomen first and then moved up to her chest and immediately covered with plastic. We don't do plastic anymore for bigger babies, but on top of that plastic, we put pre-warmed towels. And at 15 seconds, you see the CPAP starting. And throughout the rest of the little video, you see that hand absolutely steady, doesn't move. The baby's on CPAP, 10, 15 seconds. And here you see the mother's holding, and mother is tired, but already in this minute, she's focusing on her baby. She's looking at her baby. She's making eye-to-eye contact with her baby. She's connecting with her baby. And here you see the monitor starting to go on. And here is the doctor. And now I'm over here at about, I missed something. I beg your pardon, I went too slowly. Here, at 45 seconds, you heard the baby crying, making noises. The doctor is listening to the fetal heart. And so we follow the ILCOR guidelines, state-of-the-art care practice. And so at 1 minute, with a minimum of noise and fuss, we have done everything this baby needed. And the father has been there, and things are quiet and calm. The loudest noise is the mother crying. The second loudest noise is the baby crying. And the cord has not been cut. I mentioned earlier, we will now collect colostrum. There's a lot of colostrum if you look for it in the first hour. There's nothing in the second hour. And we give it to the baby. In this particular case, the nurse is having a hissy frothy. She's having a temper tantrum because the hospital policy is nil per mouth. That's not the World Health Organization policy anymore. The World Health Organization says, mother's own milk, collect it, give it now. And therefore, this procedures are now done skin to skin, zero separation. Care does not change. Only the place of care has changed. And in this way, this mother, I told you, was sick. And the baby has had 2 days of corticosteroids. And so now, here is the mother bed in the NICU. That's what the World Health Organization is asking for. 2 days later, this baby is on maximum treatment. It's on CPAP. It's on total parenteral nutrition. It's getting phototherapy. It's getting umbilical vein catheters. It's getting max treatment because it had corticosteroids for 2 weeks. And that's what you have, 2 days. That's what you have to do. Yeah. There's an incubator over there. We use that for taking x-rays. Yeah. We used it once when the mother and the father had to stand up and do something together or some documents, and then they came back. Yes, the incubator's there, but zero separation. Here's me, here's the father. Yes, even the father has got chewing tobacco. How disgusting is that? We don't mind. Father is doing skin-to-skin contact. These slides now are from Stina Klemming, who I mentioned is my research partner. And here, this is a joint presentation that we did in Hong Kong, I think it is. So now, that baby you saw born was the last case before we opened recruitment for the study. Now, this is the result of that study. We have 91 babies in Scandinavia, Sweden, and Norway, and they're randomized before they're born because we know their gestational age. Now, some in incubators, here's the research team. Now, remember I showed you that the skin-to-skin babies stabilized better? Yes, it's not because they're in Africa. Exactly the same in state-of-the-art care. You can see the difference where skin-to-skin contact makes better stability, better script score. I showed you the same invention, script score. We're using the same script score here. The babies in skin-to-skin have less hyperthermia. And their standard deviation of change of temperature is very low. They kept stable. Here we can see that mothers have a qualitative research done on them. That qualitative research, without the mothers having heard Dr. Bergman's lectures, what is the mother feeling deeply inside herself? She's feeling connectedness. She's feeling, oh, where's my slide gone? Vulnerability. Do you remember these words? And she's feeling safe haven. These are not just because I invented them in nurture science. These are the deep echoes of the mother heart. At 4 months of age, the mother-infant interaction, the baby is showing much more positive social skills in a video interview. And so, this is from Sweden. 0 separation for all infants. The World Health Organization, inseparable center around which care is provided. Stina and my other research partner, Björn Kemming, calls this couplet care. A couple is getting the care. And there's infant and family-centered developmental care from birth. And here you see a very new, small baby. Even with CPAP, it is suckling on the breast. These are different studies. I'm just taking all the slides that are here. And so benefits outweigh the risks. Yes, of course, there's risks in everything you do, but the benefit is what really matters. And so here you see a transport, cesarean section. There's one picture particularly I wanted to show you. Here you see the snow outside and the baby inside. My aunt there. No, we'll skip that one. Here you see the NICU nurse and the anesthetic nurse and the midwife. Everybody's in the same place. Is this a crowd? No, it's a team. And there we now move along. Here's the family. I'm missing one more picture. There is the picture I'm looking for. The NICU nurse and all the equipment is here. She's just standing by. Here is the midwife. There is the father and the partner. The baby's in skin-to-skin contact somewhere deep underneath here. And the NICU nurse is just standing by. And there's the ICU doctor. Everybody is providing care, even to the mother in the same bed. 0 separation. A sick mother, a sick baby. Still 0 separation. So, very quickly, that's Tina Clemming. And so here now, these results, I'm superimposing them on my map of nurture science. And you can see that they fit very perfectly. Study from Norway. We then filmed what you saw the film there and many other pieces of film. And we wrote a standardized operating protocol procedure that my wife translated into a script of a video film, which you can look at, which you won't see now, but you can look at the link. And this is a training film that we took to the immediate kangaroo mother care study conducted by Rajiv Bahl. India, 4 African countries. These babies are 1,000 grams to 1,800 grams. And they're getting the exact same technique in Norway as they are getting in these 4 countries, taught only by my wife, Jill. Nobody else. So they've got exactly the same training that's been made into a film, that's been taken to each of these countries. And so this is not third world, low income stuff. This is state-of-the-art practice that we're now doing. And therefore, these babies got the best possible care. There is the essential newborn guidelines. And so the equipment that's necessary to provide state-of-the-art care and standards according to evidence-based medicine was given to all the babies. They all got colostrum expressed. All of them had control group and intervention group 85% exclusive breastfeeding rate. I don't know any other study that produced that, never mind a program. Here is the publication in the New England Journal of Medicine. And this is a picture for me to explain to you. The weight. It takes a while to sort out weighing the baby, filling in the form, opening the envelope, checking that the papers have been filled in, because this is a study. So only at 0.6 hours is randomization done. But now in the meantime, the baby's having some care over here and the mother's over here, and we still have to fill in more forms. So skin to skin only starts at 1.3 hours. The control group, no. They are in the incubator, which is standard best care. In the skin-to-skin group, they're getting 17 hours a day. That requires quite a bit of work. Now, at 3 days, both babies are stable. They now go to the same room where they get the same care and the same dose of skin-to-skin contact, the same breastfeeding. So this is the difference between the groups. 2 days of skin-to-skin contact. And the difference is a 25% reduction in mortality. The ethics committee stops the study because they're 0.001. They don't want more babies to die and just make more noughts on a statistic. What was it now that made these babies survive? And it turns out it was sepsis. The skin-to-skin babies had much less infection. Even that the 18% less infection in the skin-to-skin group. Now, these babies have a resilience. The separated babies seem vulnerable. Now we take only the babies that got sepsis and were treated for it, and there's a 36% reduction of mortality in the skin-to-skin group. Basically, the babies that have been with mothers have a resilience that makes them become septic less. Maybe microbiota, who knows. When they get sepsis, they have much stronger resilience to survive it. This is the opposite of what we have believed for 40 years. The opposite of what we have believed. Actually, if I take this as nurture science, this is my normal biology. If I separate a baby, I will make its mortality rate go from 12 to 16. Not a 25% reduction, a 33% increase in mortality because you separated the baby from mother. Even now, in Uruguay, you have a lot of babies in incubators, and you are making their risk of dying increase by a third, by 33%. I'm skipping a little bit of detail, so I'm coming back to these. And so this is not a low-income country. This is the policy that applies for all babies, and it has a scientific explanation. There is evidence for this. I'm going to change tack a little bit now and say, what can we say and do going forward? Going forward. This is a statement from business. Each system is perfectly designed to give you exactly what you're getting today. So, what are we getting today from our intensive care units for small babies? Yes, you see, we promised that our outcomes are improving all the time. Well, what happens when we measure it? It's not true. Our outcomes are not improving. Here is the EpiPage study from Europe, a very big study. And here it shows that different age cohorts, that the disabilities remained high in each gestational group with neurodevelopmental disabilities. Another study specifically shows that for the last 20 years, there was no change at all in intelligence outcomes, large deficits in intelligence. So, what are we getting today? Bear with me. The system we have now for care of small and sick babies is perfect for producing deficits in intelligence, is perfect for producing high rates of neurodevelopmental disabilities, and also increasing mortality. So why do we need to change? Well, not just because the World Health Organization wrote a policy. Yes, the World Health Organization says we must change. There's a profoundly significant change required because of the benefit. So here is a quote from the Convention of the Rights of the Child, a human rights issue here now. And it is, a child's best interests are of paramount importance in every matter concerning the child. And the highest net benefit is what applies here. This is the best interests principle of the child. This is why we need to make changes, because all children should have this. And so here are 4 ethical axioms. And the autonomy, the overriding ethical principle, is the child's best interests. Now we have 2 other: justice and autonomy. Then we have non-maleficence. First, do no harm. Primum non nocere. Do you all know this phrase? Everybody knows Hippocrates, huh? And so, first, do no harm. It has a balancing ethic called beneficence, the obligation to do good. That is the best interest principles. Children have a right for their best interest, the highest net benefit. Our health system is actually only geared to one ethical axiom, only geared to first do no harm. And we measure harm by risk, and we do everything to decrease risks. Risk, no. And therefore, risk reduction is actually the mathematical deliverable of evidence-based medicine. We use risk reduction to decide the best option for treatment. And therefore, risk reduction and evidence-based medicine reflects the one ethical axiom, non-maleficence: first, do no harm. Yes, we think that doing good is okay, but no, this baby mustn't die. Yeah, we must reduce risk. Yes, it can be good. So we do not value the ethic of beneficence, which I've translated into English, health enhancement, in contrast to risk reduction. So I need to tell you, it is not enough to reduce the risk of harm. It is equally necessary to actively do good. Maybe even more necessary, you see, because risk reduction does not produce resilience. Risk reduction actually only is going to make vulnerability. Actively doing good, making mother-baby interaction regulation, making the mother's brain sensitized by the baby, making the baby do this behavior is what necessarily leads to resilience. Resilience is not an inevitable outcome. Resilience requires that we actively do good, that we actively keep mother and baby together with zero separation. Only that way will we get resilience. Avoiding harm may lead to harm because we haven't provided resilience. So why change? The best interests of the child are paramount. This is a human rights issue, and we have to look at all the different ethics. Yes, we say benefit and risk ratio, but our value system has only measured the risk. Yes, the benefit is not important, but we have failed the infant and the mother and the baby in this respect. We are so risk-driven. I don't want to stop the risk-drivenness, but we have to step back and we have to step forward and say, we must ensure benefit. So you can take a picture of this, or I'll send you the talk afterwards, but I want you to have this quote in your minds. The fear of something bad that might happen should not prevent the good that must happen. The good that must happen is the baby's best interests. The fear of something bad that might happen should not prevent the good that must happen. There's written some detail in this publication. We'll leave that out. So, failure or neglect to actively do good increased the mortality rate by 33%. Failure to do this skin-to-skin contact in the first 2 days increased the mortality rate. Resilience does matter. And the smaller and sicker you are, the more it matters. I can reassure you that once nurses start doing this, this article describes something called coherence, and it talks about a salutogenic model. But suddenly the nurses see we've been depriving them. This change becomes so self-driving. So we had separation is necessary. We've always separated. The intensive care unit is not a place, care for nurture. I want you to see that I have been able to delete those mindsets from the past. There is one little piece, however. That is, technology does save lives. Notice, we put the baby with all of its technology, the CPAP and the drips and the phototherapy. The care didn't change, place of care changed. So this is the same baby that we've now put in mother skin-to-skin contact. That resilience is leading to better outcome. And here is the World Health Organization, and it says, a radical rethink of how newborn care is provided. There is a mother bed in the NICU. There is all the NICU equipment and the mother bed. And there is the mother bed and a father chair. And so the family moves in to the NICU. Not a neonatal intensive care unit anymore. It's a mother neonatal care unit. Because mother is getting her care in that bed also. And so this is restoring the original paradigm for infant care. I'm coming to wrap up. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. This is one of your departments that is hosting us here. We're repairing broken men. We rather want to build strong children. So here I have Gabriela Mistral. She's a Nobel laureate. She's a founder of UNICEF, and UNICEF is sponsoring us being here today. And when I said the best interests of the child are paramount, Gabriela Mistral was a contributor to the Convention of the Rights of the Child. She also wrote a poem that you all know very well. You will hear Sol reading it for you in Spanish, but I will read it in English, even though it's a bit ugly, I suppose. Gabriela Mistral. We are guilty of many errors and many faults, but our worst crime is abandoning the children, neglecting the fountain of life. Many of the things we need can, a child cannot. Right now is the time his bones are being formed, his blood is being made, and his senses are being developed. To him we cannot answer tomorrow. His name is today. I've taken the liberty of adding a little extra verse. Right now, his genes are expressing. Right now, his brain is being wired. This very day, he and his mother are weaving their souls together in trust. To him, we cannot say tomorrow. His name is today. So this is the paradigm shift. And so I showed you the picture of the couple kissing. Here you now see that this couple have conceived a child. Can you see in this picture that there is a baby? And that baby says, please care for my brain. This is the public health imperative. This is the original paradigm. Right now, his genes are expressing and his brain is being wired. This very day, he and his mother are weaving their souls together in trust. To him, we cannot say tomorrow. His name is today. Gracias. Thank you very much.